You are listening to the Game Like Training podcast, where we talk about golf practice, golf learning, golf psychology, the PGA Tour, college golf, and basically all things golf. I took the intro back off you. On this show, we bring on top quality coaches, industry professionals, leaders in not only the coaching world, but the academic world as well. And we try to bring you as much up-to-date, scientifically backed information to help either your golf coaching or just your general golf skills. Hey, I'm your host, Matthew Cook.
And I'm your co-host, Eric Zeigel. Excited for this show today, Maddie. You know, putting is one of my favorite topics, so I'm excited to have you introduce our guest here.
Yes, we have an incredible guest on today. We have Lee Sullivan, who is a staff instructor at Putting Solutions at Torex Golf and a manager for Visio Golf Training Aids. Lee, thanks a lot for joining us. We appreciate your time and your energy on the show. And I'm sure that not only we'll learn something, but the people that are watching and listening will learn something too. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, pleasure to be here, Matt. Yeah.
Cool. I'll start us off with the first question. I know Eric's the one eager to ask putting questions here, but Lee, just to get started, can you tell us or give us your take on what you believe from a coaching perspective, what you believe is important for putting? Basically getting the ball in the hole on the putting green. What do you believe are important things?
So 3 skills that a player is going to need if they're going to hole more putts is going to be, first thing, not in any particular order, line, good read, and a speed that matches those 2.
Pretty straightforward, eh? Pretty simple, eh?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Because
that's in line with what you think.
Yeah, I know a lot of, because I do a lot of work with our juniors and junior programs and junior development and that sort of stuff. And kind of whenever we're on the putting green, whatever game or situation we put them in, it always comes back to those 3 things. Is the focus here on kind of, do they have an ability to hit their intended line? There's a difference between hitting a line and hitting your intended line. And then obviously, there's going to be something that starts to incorporate the read and speed and everything. And then, there might be a certain station that's purely focused on speed. So those are kind of the 3 things that I know we always come back to as well. And I'll be curious to hear, because I know for me, it's always kind of this, those are the 3 things that I have at the top, and then there's everything that kind of funnels down from there. For you, what do you think the club golfer or just your mid handicapper, of these 3 things, what are they probably missing out on the most, or what could help them the most?
I think green reading could probably the most help for club golfers. I think they're pretty poor in that skill. So I would say, if I was a club golfer, I'd probably look more into the read of a putt.
And what do you have a certain way that you tend to kind of help people develop that skill, or what would be your suggestions for that?
Yeah, I mean, we use some systems. We're kind of certified in an obvious system, kind of aim point. But without touching on aim point, if you kind of wanted to keep it really simple, I would say to a club golfer to, first of all, try and find the straight putt, around a hole. Try and find the straight putt. So, even if the hole's on a slope, there'll be a part of that slope that is straight across the hole. So you're going to have both an uphill and a downhill straight putt.
Yeah.
And then just try and kind of understand where you are, or what angle to that straight putt your ball is relative to the hole. And then you could start to understand or appreciate, the kind of slope that you've got to roll your ball across to get to the hole, whether that's right to left or left to right, and the severity of that slope, depending on the angle you are to the hole. So just keeping it simple, kind of look for the straight putt first of all. If your ball's really close to the straight putt, then there's not going to be an awful lot of break. But obviously, if it's 90, if it's at right angles, 90 degrees to that straight putt, then, there's the most, that's going to be quite a lot of break.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. That's actually how I go about teaching a lot of my green reading.
He feels great about himself now, Lee.
Yeah, it's not confirms what I'm doing.
Well, no, I think you're doing the right. Keep it really simple. If you're teaching kids, you've obviously got to keep it simple. But with respect, even teaching adults, you just treat them the set. You talk to them as simplistic as that, really.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, there's without getting into systems and other things, just keeping it really simple to start with, that could really help them to begin with.
Yeah, because I think it's incredible when you watch these, whether it's PGA Tour, European Tour, the best players in the world, whether they're 6 feet from the hole or 25 feet from the hole, it's amazing how close they come to making every putt. Like the line is never, very rarely, crazy off. Whereas you'll see kind of that mid-handicapper that hits a putt that they think goes right to left, and it actually goes left to right. And now they have 12 feet coming up the hill. You rarely see that with professionals.
Yeah, I know. I rarely do anyway. I rarely see that with a professional. What do you get to look at like the data and get to spend any time with some PGA Tour players, Lee? And do you have like an insight to the things that make them good at putting?
Yeah, I think ultimately, Matt, simply is that those three skills, they're much better at, aren't they, than club golfers?
For sure.
But they spend more time doing it, but ultimately they're more skillful in each one of those three areas.
How, let's say a golfer comes to you, let's not even take a beginner this time. Let's take like a pretty decent golfer. I don't know, like a low handicap golfer. Can play the game, can hit the ball, might shoot level par, couple over on a good day, maybe even under par. How would you go about coaching them these three things? Or do you do an assessment first and then you figure out what's important to tackle first? Like, what does it look like? Someone coming to you to work on to improve their putting. Like this guy walks through the door. What do you do?
I think firstly, you've got to make sure you're asking good questions. What's the player ultimately struggling with? They may tell you that the reads are good. They can start the ball online, but they're struggling with speed. So then ultimately we would get them to hit some putts and trying to identify if what they think they're struggling with, we can see that in as part of the analysis.
Yeah, so that actually goes straight into the question. I was just showing Maddie there. When you do an assessment of sort, whether it's fitting somebody for a putter or trying to kind of make changes to their current tendencies or technique, what sort of context or what environment are you collecting that data in? Are you looking at stats relating to performance from when they are playing tournaments? Because I do know a lot of people that tend to collect data, on a flat lie from 10 feet, and they kind of collect all their stroke data, and then they try to zero out or get their numbers as close to perfect as they can from that flat foot 10-foot putt, which really has no translation maybe to what their issue is out on the golf course.
Yeah, well, certainly in one of the studios, we've got a movable surface which we can add tilt, percentage of slope. So usually the analysis would start with a series of straight putts across a certain distance, and then we would collect a similar amount of puts left to right and right to left.
Okay.
We wouldn't tell them where the line was. We would get them to read the line, so then we can have a look at the data and see, how close they were to, the correct line where they should be aiming. Sometimes when you put slope, or when a player has got slope under their feet, then, if their read is inconsistent on certain breaks, then they're kind of exposed, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's ideal. You really want to get them to hit puts across, those three normal slopes,
Right.
to see if you can, you can clearly see something that they're not aware of. Possibly.
Right.
No, I like your point about the questioning. I think that's
So many people miss that part.
Yeah.
Or at least miss it.
Undervalued.
That's the right term.
Yeah.
They undervalue that initial asking a question, like the simple, what are your goals? Like, what can I do for you? What can I help you with? Yeah, you're here for me to help you with putting, but what specifically do you want me to help you with? And then from that, you gotta, which I think it's great that you go into the analysis part straight away, because then you get to match up. Well, you think that your speed's terrible. For example, I'm just throwing a random example out here. They might suggest that their speed's terrible, but when it comes to the analysis, you find that actually they're pretty good at that. Where their issue is, it lies in something else, which they may not have even been aware of. So let's say you've asked some questions, you kind of figure out what the goals are, you analyze, and have you ever been in that situation, Lee? I'm sure you have, where they've thought that their issues were one thing, but in actual fact, you found it was something else.
Yeah, that's common, Matt, to get that situation. That's kind of why you ask them the questions, and then obviously, you let them kind of loose and hitting some puts, just to see how aware they are of maybe what they're struggling with, or as the case can be, they're not. I can't really see where they may be struggling with speed, if that's what they come in and they say they're really struggling with. I mean, speed's really common, to come up in the answers when you're asking questions anyway.
Yeah.
And also player concept, what's their concept? Concept could be hurting them instead of, helping them. So maybe just changing concept can really help them to improve and change what we call, their kind of pattern.
Can you go deeper into that change of concept? Because that's something that
I think a lot of the listeners and people we have watching would find that part, the actual concept, interesting.
Yeah. So I would say a common concept for stroke that could be hurting a player would be straight back and straight through.
Yeah.
So, if a putter's missing a lot of puts, one side or the other, then the concept could be causing that. Could be a big cause of it.
right.
When you've had that one straight, we've experienced people saying that straight back and straight through is the concept they have. How do you tackle that when someone says, "Oh, well, I'm just trying to go straight back, straight through"? How do you deal with that? How do you change their beliefs with that concept?
Well, you just give them a new concept. You just say, we're gonna bust that concept. We're gonna, crush that myth, if you like, bust that myth, and they've come to you for your help. So a lot of the time, they're pretty open-minded. They're going to go with the instruction or the information that you're going to talk about.
Yeah.
I've not had anyone say, "Well, I'm not going to change that concept. I'm sticking with it." That doesn't tend to happen.
Why is that? Why is straight back and straight through bad? Why do you need to bust that myth?
Well, I think from a biomechanical tech point of view, you have to you're going to have to change things in your stroke and in your body to actually make the putter go straight back and straight through. Whether that's changing the angles in your arms or changing the rotation in your wrists to do that. So it's actually quite difficult to do.
Yeah, inefficient.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't function well.
Yeah. Do you ever find that, kind of while we're on this topic, that you have to kind of educate people as well on maybe their expectations when it comes to putting? I find a lot of people that come for a putting lesson and they say, we kind of ask them questions and I say, okay, show me the putt that you're struggling with. And they drop a ball at 35 feet and they're like, I can never make these. And I'm like, well.
you can even go to people that come to us and say, oh, I had 10 putts in around 15 feet. I didn't make any of them. Oh, I only made 2.
Yeah.
Like, dude, like the percentages of putts that you'd haul from there are pretty slim.
Yeah. Like I've found that changing people's intentions when it comes to putting, mainly on those kind of longer, unrealistic putts when it comes to their percentage of make, I find that actually improves a lot of tendencies, if you will, regarding kind of speed, because initially their intention might be to try to make a 35 footer and now it's to try to leave it within 3 feet on either side of the hole. So all of a sudden the holes just become a lot bigger in a way. But do you find that you ever have to kind of have that conversation with people regarding just kind of educating them on the likelihood of making a putt?
Yeah, definitely. If a player's saying that they're not making many 35 footers, definitely set their expectations. We use strokes gained, with some players. So we're going to say, well, for the average PGA Tour player, 35-foot putt is going to be a 5% make.
Yeah.
So, kind of join the club. No one's making 35 footers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So suddenly, you'll kind of ask them the question, what do you think the make is for the tour pros at 35 feet? And then they're going to give you an overinflated percentage.
Yeah.
So then you kind of bring their expectations down. And like you say, they're probably not feeling so bad now. So already, probably your expectations are a lot lower. Probably feel a little bit more relaxed with those length putts.
Yeah.
You've just busted a concept myth with a student, regardless of their ability and edge. Is there a particular concept that you lean towards introducing to them?
I think ultimately the concept, it can vary. We're just looking for their stroke to be more functional. Trying to get things to match, whether that's their aim and their stroke or their read and then their aim. Whatever that looks like and whatever that feels, then we'll probably use those feelings from the player that helps them to produce that stroke more consistently. That'll ultimately be their concept, but they're not really. They kind of forget about the maybe the old concept then.
Yeah.
Within that lesson, we're going to put some notes together that they'll be sent that day. So ultimately, I would say that they're kind of just focusing on the key points of that lesson that they've made, to improve.
Yeah.
Is there? I remember doing my PGA, and I remember coming across just a few books, not from the PGA, but just from other coaches, and quite often I came across, when it comes to putting, grip it like this, stand like this, do pretty XYZ, hold it like this, do this, stand like this, ball position's got to be here, and over the years, the more and more we evolve as coaches, would you agree or add to this in that there's not really anything like that exists? There's no one ball position. There's no one position your hands need to be on the grip. That all of what used to be hold it like this and stand like this really doesn't apply because everyone's so different and everyone's so individual.
I absolutely agree. I mean, that's exactly how we coach. We treat each person, whoever they are, as an individual. You know, everybody does something different to the next person, as you know. What Phil's done is he's built a framework, which isn't. It's a framework that we use to coach, and there's parts of that framework that have maybe more importance than other parts. And that framework's called the putting elements. And there's 7 elements to that framework.
Could you tell us a bit about them?
Yeah, sure. So one of those big elements would be aim bias. And then another one would be stroke dynamics. Then we'd have green reading strategy. Fourth one would probably be speed dynamics. Next one will be a targeting strategy. And then the last 2 would be putter fitting and ball roll dynamics. So we use those elements to within our coaching day to day, whoever's in front of us. So we don't coach a system. It doesn't really matter. Kind of anything goes. It doesn't really matter what it looks like. But if it functions, then ultimately that's that's our goal.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, those 7 elements: aim bias, stroke dynamics, green reading strategy, speed dynamics, target strategy, putter fitting, ball roll dynamics. That's awesome.
So when it comes to working with a student, is it safe to say that you're looking for functionality and I guess what's going to be more repeatable for them versus like the overall aesthetic of it? Is that safe to say? Fair to say?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's kind of what we're after. You know, we all have some preferences between, you know, the 4 of us. There's four of us, including Phil. So, you know, we're going to all have some preference, things that maybe work well for us. But ultimately, we don't get everybody holding it the same, or, you know, using a line on the ball, or, you know, kind of like that. It varies. It varies a lot. It's you know, it's not an easy way. We kind of look at the person as a puzzle who's in front of us, and we're just going to try and come up with the best solution for that puzzle to make it function better. And that varies, as you know, from player to player. So, you know, it's not an easy way to coach, but it's probably more fulfilling than getting everybody into the same grip and standing the same way and straight back and straight through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Sure.
I've got one more.
Go for it.
All right, I
got
got
something to ask about the training device.
Yeah. I've got questions for that too, but
Well,
all right.
This is your question time.
So here's the question. I don't know if
I might even go for a coffee then.
Quiet eye, gaze control, kind of in line with that research. Have you guys looked into that at all? Kind of quiet eye's influence on putting performance?
Phil, I'm pretty certain, I'm pretty accurate in think I'm telling you that Phil's looked at that in a bit more depth with some eye specialists. I think an optometrist. I think at a tournament a couple of years ago, he actually brought the specialist in, and they did some work with some tour players. But as far as the results go, you know, we don't really kind of go into quiet eye.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, what we do, we kind of look at things called eye gaze and head position. You know, all of us have a certain corridor of vision, and I think depending on head position or head tilt, that could distort the line on a ball or the the target line of a player.
Yep.
So yeah, we kind of look at head position and kind of eye gaze, we call it.
Okay.
But don't really look at quiet eye. Yeah, because ultimately, I think Phil's obviously looked at it, and it's just less relevant than the other elements or the points or the components in those 7 elements.
Makes sense.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Go on, I know you got another one.
On that. No, the only reason I asked, I saw a YouTube video, this was a couple years ago, and it was by some team in Scotland, I believe is where they're based out of, but they were using eye tracking software. And I can't remember the name of the player they were using it with, but basically found that his central vision was never actually located where he thought it was. And so they changed his central vision, and putting performance improved just in kind of that gaze control, that concept of gaze control. But obviously looking at head tilt and that kind of thing could have addressed that issue. It could have just been a different way of looking at the same thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I understand. I would always say, if you're going to change something, what's the knock-on effect that could have on performance?
Yeah, completely agree.
We talk about players being in their own ecosystem. So as you know, if you change something within that ecosystem, it might throw something else down, throw something else out down the line.
Yeah.
So you've got to be careful if someone's aiming left, but they're holding puts, then if you improve their aim,
right,
then, are they going to start? Could that make their performance worse?
Right.
It's always at what cost, isn't it?
Yeah.
Almost like, are you going to do this? Okay, but at what cost are you doing that?
Yeah. I think you just got to be patient in the analysis and just tread carefully and try a few things while you've got that player with the time that you've got. It's definitely worth trying a few things to see what works well and what doesn't, because ultimately it's a puzzle. You're just trying to figure a few things out.
Yeah, for sure.
I know you got. Let's jump on the training aids, the putting training aids, because I know there's a lot of hype about these training aids. There's a lot of tall players using them. You can correct me if I'm wrong on who's using them, or if there's not many tall players using them. I think there are.
I feel like I see it on social media, and
right?
yeah,
it's crazy. So I know there's a lot of people that are looking for these training aids, and you being someone that kind of manages a little bit of that business, could you tell us a little bit more about Visio and the putting training aids? And I think Eric's got a more specific question about the arc, something about the arc.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but could you just tell us a little bit about the training aids?
Yeah, so the training aids, Phil created the training aids with not starting out to create a business, but ultimately the first training aid was the putting template, the arcs that you're familiar with, and he wanted to just come up with a 2D kind of template that would give his players good feedback to some good concepts that would include path and face angle, and they work really well. So I think he just started selling a couple of templates online, and it kind of went from there, really. They obviously gave great feedback to the players that were using them, so players were talking about them. It helped them give them that feedback, both kind of visually and kinesthetically. So it kind of went from there. So then he kind of started creating other aids that were more relative or to, if someone's struggling with start line, what would be a good aid to kind of help that player maybe develop that skill. speed, what could help a player develop that skill, speed, green reading, also, kind of going from green reading to targeting strategy.
Yeah.
Just a simple aid like the phantom holes, the rubber holes. Simply talking about green reading strategy with someone, and we could use those phantom holes at certain parts of the read.
Yeah.
To help the player target better or visualize better.
Yeah, so all the training aids kind of tie back to those 7 elements that you talked about.
Yeah, they do really. Yeah, the three skills. Yeah.
Cool, we got it pulled up behind us now.
Branding for you here, buddy.
So I know the My Putting template. There's 2 different models out now. Well, I know there's the different arc degrees. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, you are. So there's with the templates that have got the face lines.
Yep, there's those ones, and then the ones without the face lines, right?
Yeah. So there's four different arcs with the face lines: 12, 15, 18, and 21 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And then the ones without the face line, so a little bit quieter visually, more to do with helping the player with path.
Okay.
You've got 12, 15, and 18 degrees in those 3 templates.
People looking to purchase one of these My Putting templates, what would you typically suggest most people buy as far as because I'm sure a lot of people have no idea what their arc tendency is. So like which match should they be looking at, do you think?
Yeah, so the template, I mean, to be clear, the templates they're a broad concept of players that generally fall into those 4 categories or close to those 4 strengths of arc. So they're not an exact,
Right.
We're not saying you have to, if you get a 12 degree, you have to make sure that your stroke matches that 12 degree.
All right.
So I would say the most popular templates are probably the 12 and 15 degrees between players. A good way would probably to film with an iPhone above a template, maybe, just to see what a player does. A player may, the first couple of inches on the way back, kind of match the template, but then come inside a little bit, which is absolutely fine. I wouldn't kind of stress to the player that they need to keep the sweet spot directly over that curved line. It's just really to give them some kind of both visual, like I say, and kinesthetic feedback. Certainly, maybe for a player that takes the putter outside and comes across it to the inside, they're going to get feedback straight away if they're putting off an arc.
Yeah, and I like this this training aid a lot better than the putting rails that you see out there. People rest in their club up against the putting rail. I like this one a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just I think with them being less of a constraint, and I would say more kind of organic, I think the player can just create maybe the right or a better feeling maybe more quickly.
Yeah.
Because it's like a free hand kind of stroke, like you say, instead of being too constrained by, maybe up against some material.
Well, when you look at it from a motor learning perspective, you're asking the golfer to cognitively engage. You're asking them to, all right, to be so active in their own mind about whether the putter's traveling the right way. It's not something doing it. They haven't got the stabilizers on anymore. It's down to them to adjust the movement accordingly as they see it happening.
Perception, action, coupling.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this, I think it's fascinating how all throughout the conversation, and the more we have these conversations with like-minded people like yourself, we find that it isn't just as simple as sticking a swing guide on and putting a rail down. There's way more to it, and it's so individual that no one ever knew before that it was this individual, and that coaching isn't just telling someone to stand like this or hold it like this. there's so much more to asking the right questions, and there's so much more to doing a better job analyzing the person, not just as a golfer, but as a human being. And then at what cost are you going to try to make a change? I think there's so much more to it. And we come across this same sort of conversation quite often now. I think it's great. Well, do you have any more? Because I'm going to wrap it up if not. You could go for days.
Yeah, no, that's probably.
All right.
I'll shoot you an email.
This was great. This was really good. Thanks again, Lee, for joining us. It's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed having you on. I'm sure Eric has, and anyone that's watching and listening has as well.
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Eric. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Lee.
Mate. All right, so to keep up to date, you can subscribe to our mailing list on gltgolf.com. If Eric's amazing, he might even put it on the screen behind me. You can go on gltgolf.com/podcast radio show. That's where you'll find this one. You can hook up with us on SoundCloud. You can join all of our social media channels, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and we're obviously recording this for YouTube as well. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm excited to get this out. See you next time.
Thanks, Lee.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you.